She walked in with perfect credit, a prestigious career and a dream, but before she could even tour the property, the police were called on her. What happened next left a community divided. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Oak Ridge Estates as Dr. Maya Wilson pulled up in her reliable 2015 Volvo sedan. She had driven this car throughout her residency. Every dent, every coffee stain on the console told a story. But today she was ready for something new, not because the car had failed her, but because she had finally arrived at a place in life where she could breathe. After 7 grueling years of medical school, followed by a demanding residency in cardiothoracic surgery, and finally securing a position at Westlake Memorial, one of Denver's most prestigious hospitals, Dr. Wilson had earned this moment. She stepped out of her car, smoothing her tailored blazer over a simple blouse, designer slacks falling perfectly over sensible yet elegant heels, and the unmistakable confidence of a woman who had overcome every obstacle placed in her path. She wasn't there to browse or daydream. She had already studied the floor plans of the Victorian home, memorized the square footage, the property taxes, and calculated exactly how it would fit into her life. All she needed was a walkthrough, a handshake, and a signature. The real estate office of Pinnacle Properties in Boulder, Colorado was unusually quiet for a Saturday afternoon. A young white woman, early 30s, perfectly highlighted blonde hair, designer outfit, watched Maya walk in. Her nameplate read, Heather. "Hi there. Can I help you with something?" Heather asked, her tone professionally distant. Maya smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Yes, I'm here about the Victorian on Maple Drive. I have a pre-approval letter right here," she said, retrieving a neatly organized folder from her leather portfolio. Heather glanced at it without taking it. "Oh, that property? It just went on the market yesterday. The asking price is quite substantial." "I'm aware," Maya replied, still smiling. "I've already run the numbers with my financial advisor. I'm comfortable with the investment." There was a pause that stretched just a beat too long, not enough to name, but enough to feel a shift in the atmosphere, subtle but unmistakable. Heather finally nodded. "Let me check if the property is available to view today. Why don't you have a seat in our waiting area?" While Heather disappeared into a back office, Maya wandered to the wall of featured listings, her eyes finding the Victorian immediately. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a wraparound porch, and a garden that reminded her of her grandmother's home in Georgia, where she spent summers as a child. It represented everything she'd worked for. A sanctuary after 16-hour surgeries, a place to eventually raise a family, a statement that she had made it despite every voice that said she couldn't. But Heather didn't return. Instead, another woman emerged from the office, mid-50s, ash-blonde bob, pearls at her throat, expensive suit that spoke of commission checks and country club memberships. Her nameplate read, "Victoria Harrington, broker, owner." Maya's smile remained in place, but something in her posture shifted imperceptibly. "Good afternoon," Victoria said, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone who had closed million-dollar deals. "I understand you're interested in the Maple Drive property." "Yes, I am. I have my pre-approval right here," Maya replied, once again offering the folder. Victoria didn't take it either. "That's a very special property. What made you interested in that particular home?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "I've been looking for something historic with character. The location is perfect for my commute to Westlake Memorial, where I've just joined the cardiothoracic surgery team." "You're a heart surgeon?" Victoria asked, with a hint of surprise that she quickly masked. "Yes, I specialize in minimally invasive procedures. I completed my fellowship at Johns Hopkins last year." Victoria nodded, but her eyes held a calculation. And you're looking to purchase a loan? No cosigner? Maya blinked, her professional demeanor momentarily slipping. I don't need a cosigner. My finances are all in order, as you can see in my pre-approval documentation. Of course, Victoria said quickly. Just trying to get a complete picture. We have a responsibility to our sellers, you understand. Maya understood perfectly. This wasn't about responsibility to sellers. This was about doubt. Doubt that shouldn't exist given the paperwork in her hand. Heather returned, whispering something to Victoria, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I'm sorry, Dr. Wilson, but it seems the seller has requested that we only show the property to pre-qualified buyers. Maya stared at both women. I am pre-qualified. That's what this letter confirms. My credit score is 815. I have no debt aside from minimal student loans, and I'm prepared to make a substantial down payment. Victoria smiled tightly. We'll need to verify all of that information before we can proceed. It might take some time. Maya looked back at the photo of the Victorian. I came prepared with everything you need. You could verify it all with a simple phone call. But instead of reaching for the phone, Victoria exchanged another glance with Heather. The air shifted again, and Maya knew with certainty this wasn't about verification. This was about something else entirely. Maya stood in the reception area for several minutes, watching the two women through the glass partition of Victoria's office. They weren't rushing. Victoria was typing something on her computer. Heather was texting on her phone. No keys, no property information sheets, no house tour, just waiting. Maya checked her watch, 2:33 p.m. She had planned to meet her friend Jasmine for dinner later, maybe stop by the hospital to check on a post-op patient, but now her carefully structured day was unraveling, a familiar knot forming in her stomach. Not anger, not yet, just the cold recognition of a pattern she had seen too many times before. Victoria emerged from her office. Dr. Wilson, would you mind stepping into my office for a moment? Inside the tastefully decorated space, Maya took a seat in a leather chair. Victoria sat behind her desk. Heather hovered near the doorway. So, Victoria began, her tone artificially casual, we need to conduct some additional verification. Would you mind sharing your employment contract? That's not standard procedure for viewing a property, Maya replied evenly. My pre-approval letter confirms my income verification has already been completed by the lender. We've had some unfortunate situations recently, Victoria said, ignoring Maya's point. People misrepresenting their qualifications. I see, Maya said. And do you request employment contracts from all potential buyers? Victoria's smile tightened. When necessary. I've been watching your office for the past half hour, Maya said quietly. 3 other couples came in and left with agents to view properties. Were they all asked for employment contracts? Victoria didn't answer directly. Do you have a LinkedIn profile we could look at? Just to confirm your position at Westlake. Maya's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. You didn't ask the couple who just left for their LinkedIn profiles. They're repeat clients, Victoria replied quickly. No, they're not, Maya countered. I overheard them saying this was their first time working with your agency. Victoria looked away. A receptionist knocked gently on the door frame. Victoria, the Millers are on line 2 about their closing. Tell them I'll call back, she said tersely. The receptionist glanced at Maya, hesitated, then left. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Look, Dr. Wilson, we have procedures in place to protect our high-value properties. I'm not saying you're not qualified, but we need to be thorough. Thorough, Maya repeated. So you assume fraud when a black woman walks in to buy $1 million home? That's not what I. You know my profession. You know my income level. You have my pre-approval letter from a reputable lender. Yet I'm sitting here being interrogated while other buyers are already touring homes. Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Heather stared at her phone. Maya stood up. You want verification? Call my lender. Their number is on the letter. But I won't sit here being treated like I'm trying to commit fraud when I'm more qualified than most of your clients. She walked toward the door. Victoria didn't stop her. Heather stepped aside. Outside, Maya took a deep breath, leaning against a decorative column. Her phone buzzed, Jasmine checking in. She didn't answer, not yet. She needed to collect herself. Nearby, an older white man in a golf shirt watched the scene with interest. He'd been sitting in the waiting area reviewing property listings. His eyes followed Maya with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Inside, Victoria picked up her phone. Yes, this is Victoria Harrington at Pinnacle Properties. We have a situation that might require assistance. Just a precaution, but if you could send someone over. What Victoria didn't realize was that the man in the golf shirt wasn't just any potential buyer. He was Richard Donnelly, a retired judge and current board member of the Colorado Fair Housing Coalition, and he had seen enough to recognize what was happening. The afternoon had grown cooler, but Maya felt warm, too warm, standing alone by the fountain in front of the office, arms crossed, breathing measured and deliberate. A calm woman isn't threatening. A calm woman is reasonable. That's what she had learned through years of being the only black woman in operating rooms, in conference presentations, in department meetings. But sometimes, no matter how composed you remain, the world still sees what it expects to see. Inside, Victoria paced her office while Heather watched through the window like sentries awaiting reinforcements. The call had been placed, a report of a confrontational individual, possible fraudulent documents, situation requiring de-escalation. Code words that painted a picture without having to say the quiet part out loud. 5 miles away, Officer Sarah Chen received the dispatch. She'd been with the Boulder Police Department for 5 years. Nothing about the call suggested immediate danger, but phrases like confrontational and high-value property created a specific image in her mind. She took her time responding. No lights, no sirens, just a routine check. Outside the office, Maya checked her messages. 3 texts from Jasmine. How's house hunting going? Find your dream home yet? Still on for dinner at 7? She didn't reply. How could she explain what was happening? It wasn't dramatic enough for headlines, just the slow, grinding weight of assumptions and suspicions that followed her through life like an unwelcome shadow. Behind her, Richard Donnelly had moved to his car, but he wasn't leaving. He was making a phone call, his voice low but urgent. Marissa, it's Richard. I'm at Pinnacle Properties, and I'm witnessing what appears to be a clear violation of fair housing laws in progress. Maya was about to call her lender directly when a police cruiser pulled into the parking lot. Her heart rate increased slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer exhaustion of having to face this. Again. Officer Chen stepped out of her vehicle, professional but cautious. Ma'am, can I speak with you for a moment? Maya nodded. Of course, officer. We received a call about a disturbance, Chen said, her eyes scanning Maya, looking for signs of aggression or impairment. There's no disturbance. Maya replied evenly. I came to view a property. I have pre-approval from my lender. The broker is refusing to show me the home and apparently called you instead. May I see some identification? Chen asked, still maintaining her distance. Maya reached slowly into her purse, retrieving her driver's license and medical ID. I'm Dr. Maya Wilson, cardiothoracic surgeon at Westlake Memorial. I came here to view a home I'm interested in purchasing. Officer Chen examined the IDs carefully, then looked back at Maya with a slightly different expression. And what happened exactly? I presented my pre-approval letter. They refused to take it. They asked for additional verification that isn't standard. They've shown properties to multiple other clients while making me wait and questioning my qualifications. As Maya spoke, Richard Donnelly approached. Officer, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Richard Donnelly, retired district court judge and board member of the Colorado Fair Housing Coalition. I've been witnessing this situation unfold, and I believe there may be discriminatory practices at work here. Officer Chen's posture changed subtly. She looked from Maya to Richard, then back again. Sir, were you present for the interaction inside? I was in the waiting area, Richard confirmed. I observed Dr. Wilson present her documentation. I observed the broker's reluctance to proceed. I observed 3 other potential buyers, all white, being immediately assisted while Dr. Wilson was questioned and delayed. Victoria emerged from the office, her confident stride faltering slightly at the sight of the 3-way conversation. Officer, thank you for coming, she said, her voice carrying across the parking lot. We had some concerns about. What exactly, Ms. Harrington? Richard interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of his years on the bench. Victoria stopped short. I'm sorry, do I know you? Richard Donnelly, Colorado Fair Housing Coalition. I've been sitting in your waiting area for the past hour, observing what appears to be a textbook case of housing discrimination. The color drained from Victoria's face. There's been a misunderstanding. Officer Chen cut in. Ma'am, I've reviewed Dr. Wilson's identification and her pre-approval documentation. Everything appears to be in order. Can you explain why you felt it necessary to call the police? Victoria struggled to find words. We have protocols for high-value properties. That apparently only applies to certain buyers, Richard noted. That's not true, Victoria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Maya hadn't moved, hadn't raised her voice, hadn't done anything but stand her ground with dignity and restraint. Officer Chen turned back to her. Dr. Wilson, would you like to file a formal complaint? Maya looked at Victoria, at the office where Heather and other staff now watched through the windows, at the Victorian home in the property listing that she had imagined herself living in. Not at this moment, she said finally. But I would like it noted in your report that I came here as a qualified buyer and was treated like a criminal. Chen nodded, making notes on her tablet. And what would you like to do now? Maya looked back at the real estate office. I no longer wish to do business with this agency, but I do want to see that house. Richard stepped forward. I know several excellent real estate attorneys who would be interested in this situation, and I believe I can recommend another agency that would be happy to show you that property. Victoria started to speak, but Officer Chen raised a hand. Ma'am, I suggest you return to your office. Unless Dr. Wilson wishes to press charges, there's nothing more to discuss. The confrontation ended not with shouting, but with silence. Maya collected her portfolio, thanked Officer Chen and Richard Donnelly, and walked back to her Volvo with her head high. As she drove away, she didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't pound the steering wheel. She simply turned on a playlist of Nina Simone and let the music wash over her as Boulder's picturesque streets blurred past. This wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. But something about this particular afternoon felt like a turning point. Not because it was extraordinary, but because this time, someone had been watching. By evening, Maya sat across from Jasmine at their favorite restaurant, recounting the day. Jasmine, a corporate attorney who had faced her own battles in predominantly white law firms, listened with the understanding of shared experience. "So this retired judge just happened to be there?" she asked, swirling her wine. "Right place, right time," Maya replied. "He gave me his card and the contact information for a fair housing attorney named Marissa Okoye. Said she'd be very interested in speaking with me." "Are you going to call her?" Maya stared into her glass. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just move on, find another house, forget it happened. And the other part? The other part remembers being told I didn't look like a doctor by a patient last month. Remembers being mistaken for a nurse every day during residency. Remembers my mother telling me I'd have to work twice as hard to get half as far." Jasmine reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. "Whatever you decide, I've got your back." Maya nodded, grateful for the support, but already knowing what she would do. This wasn't just about a house anymore. That night, Richard Donnelly made several calls. One to Marissa Okoye, the housing attorney, one to a journalist friend at the Denver Post, and one to a former clerk who now worked for the state's real estate commission. By Sunday morning, Victoria Harrington's phone was ringing nonstop. Emails flooded her inbox. A local news reporter requested comment on allegations of discriminatory practices. She tried to formulate a response, something about misunderstandings and protocols, but the words rang hollow even to her own ears. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her apartment, staring at Marissa Okoye's business card before finally picking up the phone. "Ms. Okoye, this is Dr. Maya Wilson. Richard Donnelly suggested I call you about an incident that occurred yesterday." Marissa's voice was warm but professional. "Dr. Wilson, I've been expecting your call. Judge Donnelly briefed me on what happened. I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible if you're willing." They arranged to meet that afternoon at Marissa's office downtown, a sleek space with views of the mountains and walls lined with framed newspaper articles about housing discrimination cases she had won. "What happened to you wasn't just wrong, it was illegal," Marissa explained after listening to Maya's account. "The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, or disability." "I know the law," Maya replied, "but proving discrimination is another matter entirely." Marissa smiled. "That's where Judge Donnelly comes in, an independent witness with impeccable credentials who observed the entire interaction. Plus, we can subpoena records to show pattern and practice." "How many black clients has Pinnacle sold to in the past 5 years? How many properties over $1 million have they sold to people of color?" Maya considered this. What would a lawsuit involve? Time, some stress, public attention, but also the possibility of real change and, yes, potentially significant damages. "I didn't do this for money." "No one ever does," Marissa said gently. "But financial penalties are what force companies to change. That and public accountability." By Monday morning, the story had leaked to local media. The headline was restrained but clear. "Prominent surgeon alleges housing discrimination at Boulder Real Estate Agency." The article mentioned no names but quoted sources familiar with the situation, describing how a highly qualified medical professional had been subjected to unusual scrutiny and had the police called on her apparently due to racial profiling. Victoria Harrington's phone rang at 6:30 a.m. It was the president of the Boulder Board of Realtors. "Victoria, we need to talk. Now." Across town, Maya performed her first surgery at Westlake Memorial, a complex valve repair on a 62-year-old patient with multiple complications. Her hands were steady, her focus absolute. In the operating room, at least, her competence was never questioned. When she emerged, Still in her scrubs, her phone showed 17 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. News had traveled fast, and everyone wanted a comment. She ignored them all, responding only to a text from Richard Donnelly. Dr. Wilson, the State Real Estate Commission has opened an investigation into Pinnacle Properties. They would like to speak with you when you're available. By Tuesday, the story had grown. Social media amplified it. Showing While Black began trending locally. Former clients of Pinnacle came forward with their own stories of differential treatment. A black couple described being steered away from certain neighborhoods for their own comfort. A Latino family recalled being told a property was sold only to see it still listed weeks later. A Middle Eastern doctor shared emails showing different pricing information than what white colleagues had received. Victoria Harrington issued a statement. Pinnacle Properties categorically denies any discriminatory practices or policies. We regret the misunderstanding that occurred and are cooperating fully with inquiries. The statement only fueled the fire. Misunderstanding became a mocking hashtag attached to stories of racism across industries. By Wednesday, Pinnacle's Yelp page was flooded with one-star reviews. Their phone rang constantly, but few were calling about listings. Heather, the agent who had first greeted Maya, gave notice, claiming the environment had become toxic, though whether she meant before or after the incident remained unclear. That evening, Maya finally agreed to a single interview with a respected local television journalist named Eliza Washington, who happened to be a black woman herself. They met at the hospital after Maya's shift. No dramatic lighting, no sensationalism, just two women having a conversation about an experience that was all too familiar. Dr. Wilson, in your own words, what do you want people to understand about what happened that day? Maya considered the question carefully. I want people to understand the cumulative effect. When you're constantly asked to prove yourself, constantly treated with suspicion, constantly made to feel like you don't belong in spaces you've earned the right to occupy, it takes a toll. And yet, you remained calm throughout. I didn't have the luxury of anger. An angry black woman becomes a stereotype, becomes justification for the very treatment I was experiencing. What do you hope comes from this? Maya looked directly into the camera. I hope the next woman who walks in looking like me, with her documentation in order and her dreams in hand, gets to walk out with the keys to her future instead of the burden of someone else's assumptions. The interview aired that night, and by morning had been shared thousands of times, not because it was sensational, but because it was authentic. Meanwhile, Victoria Harrington faced a growing crisis at Pinnacle Properties. The Board of Realtors had called an emergency meeting. The State Commission investigation was proceeding. And now, Marissa Okoye had filed a formal complaint alleging violations of the Fair Housing Act. Victoria's attorney advised settling quickly, but she resisted, still believing she could weather the storm. What she didn't anticipate was the call from her largest client, a developer who had exclusively listed 12 luxury properties with Pinnacle for the past 5 years. Victoria, we've decided to go in another direction. The negative publicity isn't something we can afford to be associated with. By Friday, Victoria had no choice. Her attorney arranged a meeting with Marissa Okoye and Maya Wilson in a neutral conference room downtown. Victoria arrived first, subdued and nervous, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. When Maya walked in, accompanied by Marissa and Richard Donnelly, Victoria couldn't meet her eyes. Dr. Wilson, she began, voice strained, I want to personally apologize for your experience at our agency. It was unacceptable. Maya said nothing, waiting. We've prepared a settlement offer that includes financial compensation and a commitment to anti-bias training for all our staff. Marissa slid the document back across the table. This isn't adequate. My client wasn't looking for a payout. She wants structural change. Victoria looked confused. What does that mean exactly? It means, Maya finally spoke, that I want Pinnacle to hire an independent auditor to review all sales and listings for the past 5 years to identify patterns of discrimination. That would be extremely costly and time-consuming. It means, Maya continued, that I want Pinnacle to establish a scholarship fund for minority students entering real estate. We're not a large enough firm to... And it means, Maya finished, that I want a public acknowledgement, not of a misunderstanding, but of the actual problem. That your agency treated me differently because of what I look like. Victoria started to object, but Richard Donnelly interrupted. Ms. Harrington, I've spoken with 6 former clients who experienced similar treatment at your agency. I've reviewed your sales data for the past 3 years, which shows a disturbing pattern of steering minority clients away from certain neighborhoods. The evidence is compelling enough that the Commission is considering revoking your broker's license. The room fell silent. Victoria stared at the table. What do you want me to do? The right thing, Maya said simply, for once. 2 weeks later, Maya stood on the porch of a different Victorian home, not the one she had originally wanted, but one she liked even better, with more character, more history, and a garden that reminded her even more of her grandmother's. Beside her stood Jasmine and their real estate agent, a young black woman named Tiana Jackson, who had approached Maya after seeing her interview. I started my own agency last year specifically to create a safe space for buyers who've been marginalized in the traditional real estate market. The 3 women toured the house, discussing renovation possibilities, calculating costs, imagining futures. No one questioned Maya's qualifications. No one doubted her ability to afford the property. No one called the police. That evening, Maya made an offer. It was accepted the next day. Meanwhile, across town, Victoria Harrington sat in an empty conference room signing papers that would change Pinnacle Properties forever. A settlement agreement that included a substantial payment to the Fair Housing Coalition, mandatory training for all staff, an independent audit of past practices, a public statement acknowledging discriminatory treatment, and Victoria's own resignation as broker of record. The statement was published in the Denver Post, the Boulder Daily Camera, and on Pinnacle's website. Pinnacle Properties acknowledges that on September 15th, Dr. Maya Wilson was subjected to discriminatory treatment based on racial bias when she attempted to view a property. We apologize unreservedly for this violation of fair housing laws and for the disrespect shown to Dr. Wilson. We are committed to making the systemic changes necessary to ensure this never happens again. It wasn't everything Maya had asked for, but it was a start. A month later, Maya hosted a housewarming party in her new home. Colleagues from the hospital, friends from medical school, her family who had flown in from Georgia, and some new friends, Richard Donnelly and his wife, Marissa Okoye and her partner, and Tiana Jackson, who had helped her find not just a house, but a sense of justice. As the evening wound down, Maya stood on her wraparound porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Jasmine joined her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To your new home," she toasted, "and to stand your ground." Maya smiled, clinking her glass. "You know what my grandmother used to say? They can keep you out for a while, but they can't keep you out forever." Inside, laughter echoed through rooms that would hold new memories, new achievements, new beginnings. The house wasn't just a structure of wood and stone, it was a statement that some spaces can't be denied to those determined enough to claim them. The following week, Maya received a letter from a young black woman in pre-med at the University of Colorado. Dr. Wilson, I saw your interview and it gave me courage. Last year, I almost quit my program after a professor suggested I might be more comfortable in nursing instead of medicine. Your story reminded me that sometimes the most powerful response to doubt is simply to keep going. Thank you for showing me what that looks like. Maya read it twice, then pinned it to the bulletin board in her home office next to her medical degrees and certifications. She hadn't set out to be a symbol or to fight a public battle. She had just wanted a home. But now her story has become something more, a reminder that change happens not always through grand gestures, but through individuals who refuse to accept the limitations others try to impose. 6 months later, the State Real Estate Commission completed its investigation of Pinnacle Properties, finding substantial evidence of discriminatory practices and issuing the largest fine in its history. Pinnacle was sold to new owners who rebranded the agency and implemented the changes Maya had demanded. Victoria Harrington surrendered her broker's license and moved to Arizona, away from the controversy. Heather, the young agent, reached out to Maya with an unexpected email. Dr. Wilson, I've spent months reflecting on my role in what happened that day. I was wrong to participate in something I knew felt off, even if I didn't speak up. I'm writing not to ask forgiveness, but to let you know I've joined Miss Jackson's agency as an assistant to learn how real estate should be done right. Thank you for the difficult lesson. Maya didn't respond immediately. Forgiveness wasn't something to be rushed, but she saved the email, recognizing that change came in many forms. 1 year after the incident, Maya performed a groundbreaking surgery that made headlines across the medical community, saving the life of a child with a congenital heart defect that most surgeons considered inoperable. The same week, she was invited to join the board of the Colorado Fair Housing Coalition, alongside Richard Donnelly. Her perspective as someone who had lived through housing discrimination would be invaluable to their ongoing work. At the first meeting, Richard pulled her aside. You know, when I saw what was happening that day, I could have just walked away. Most people would have. Why didn't you? Maya asked. Because 30 years ago, my daughter married a wonderful man who happens to be black, and I've watched them be treated differently at restaurants, at schools, at stores. I've watched my grandchildren navigate a world that sometimes sees their skin before their humanity. I couldn't walk away because I finally understood that silence is complicity. Maya nodded, understanding completely. That evening, she drove home to her Victorian, now fully renovated and truly hers. The porch lights welcomed her as she pulled into the driveway. Inside, she kicked off her shoes, poured a glass of wine, and sat in her favorite window seat, looking out at the neighborhood that had initially tried to keep her out. On her coffee table sat a framed photo of her grandmother standing proudly in front of the first house she had owned in 1968, just months after the Fair Housing Act had made it illegal to deny her that right. Maya raised her glass to the photograph. We're still working on it, Grandma, but we're getting there. Outside, a young couple walked by, a black woman and a white man, pushing a stroller and looking up at the houses on the street, perhaps imagining their own future home. Maya watched them pass and felt a quiet certainty that the world was changing, not fast enough, not easily, but inevitably, one house, one stand, one story at a time. Because when you're finally treated with dignity, not as an exception but as a rule, you don't have to spend your life proving you deserve to be there. You can simply live, and that is the most revolutionary act of all.